everyone, to another episode of Dimitra's Dishes. Today I'm going to be teaching you how to make a quick and delicious, easy weeknight meal. We're going to be making Greek meatballs in a tomato feta sauce. It's going to come together in no time and you're going to love it. Your whole family is going to love it actually. Let's get started. Okay, so we're going to begin by making the meatballs. This is the same recipe that I use for all my meatball recipes or dinner ideas. And it starts off with 2 pounds of ground beef that I have in a bowl. But first I'm going to add an onion that I've just quartered into my food processor, and I'll pulse it several times until it's very finely chopped. Add that to the meat mixture. Next, if I had garlic cloves, I would have actually added those first, but I already pre-minced my garlic. And you'll see later on when I add it to the meat what I mean. I have a handful of parsley that's been washed and dried really well. And I'm just using the leaves and the very fine stems. All the thick stems from the bottom I just chopped off, and I'll add it to a compost pile. Add the parsley to the food processor and pulse that until it's very finely chopped. Of course you can do this by hand too, so you don't dirty another piece of kitchen equipment, but this makes life so much easier. Once the parsley is finely chopped, add it to the bowl with the ground beef in there. Then I'll add 4 garlic cloves that have been finely grated. I just get a big bag of peeled garlic cloves at least once a month, and I chop them up in my food processor until they're very finely chopped. Really, they're minced, and I store them in freezer safe bags. I have a video on that. I'll post it down below. Next, we're going to add 1.5 cups of unseasoned panko breadcrumbs. You can use regular breadcrumbs if you like. They don't have to be panko. It's just something that I have on hand all the time. 2 eggs, and I'm just going to beat them in the side of the bowl so I don't dirty one more thing. 1 cup of milk, 2.5 teaspoons of salt. You can add less if you want, or more if you like it a little bit saltier. Some freshly cracked black pepper, about 1/2 teaspoon. A little pinch of crushed red pepper flakes for heat if you like them, otherwise you could leave them out. And 1/2 teaspoon of dried mint. If you have fresh mint, you can finely chop about 1 tablespoon of fresh mint and add it in. Now we're just going to mix everything all together so that way that meat and the aromatics are combined. And this is just going to make everything nice and flavorful. Make sure that you mix it really well. If you want to put on some gloves, you can do that. And then I'll form the mixture into meatballs. You can do this any size you want. This is the size that I find to be a really good size. This is what they look like. They're about the size of a golf ball, maybe a little bit larger. And if you make them this size, and if you're using 2 pounds of ground meat like I am, you'll get between 28 to 30 meatballs. Put them all on a tray. I got 29 meatballs out of this. Now I'm not going to use all of these. They freeze well, so I'll just bake as many as I need for today, and the rest I'll put them in the freezer. Once they're set and solid, I'll just transfer them into freezer safe bags, and we can pop them in the air fryer to make quick meals throughout the week. But once the meatballs are formed, you can transfer them to a baking pan. I'm just using this round baking pan here. You can use a 9 by 13 inch baking pan if you'd like. And we're going to move on to making the sauce. The sauce is so simple to make. In a saucepan over here, add about 1/4 cup of olive oil and 2 to 3 grated garlic cloves. Warm that through until the garlic is nice and fragrant, and then I'll add 28 ounces, or that would have been 2 cans of crushed tomatoes, but I love this to be really, really saucy, so I'll add 1 more can of crushed tomatoes to this. These tomatoes have no flavor, and crushed tomatoes tend to be very acidic depending on the company or the brand that you're using. So now we're going to season the sauce with some salt and freshly cracked black pepper. I also like to add a little hint of cinnamon to this to give it that Greek flavor. My kids started to not know that it's there, but it just makes it so aromatic. Some crushed red pepper flakes and 1 teaspoon of dried oregano, and you are going to have to sweeten this with something. You can use honey or sugar because we're not going to cook this on the stovetop long enough to get it sweet. We're also not adding any onion to this, so start with 1 to 2 tablespoons of sugar or honey and taste it as you go. If it needs a little bit more, sometimes it's very, very acidic and it does need more to get it to the right balance. Just taste it as you go. We're going to warm this through over medium heat for about 5 to 10 minutes. Take it off of the heat. We're going to pour it over the meatballs, and then I'm going to cover the pan with some aluminum foil. My oven is preheated to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. This is going to bake on the center rack for an hour. Then I'm going to take it out of the oven, remove the foil. I'll crumble in lots of feta cheese. Make sure that you buy the feta chunks for this, and you break it up into chunks and you put it yourself. Don't buy crumbled feta. I say it in every video just in case this is the first time you're tuning in. Crumbled feta, I don't even know why they sell it. They shouldn't. It's horrible. Just go ahead and nestle the feta in between the meatballs so you'll have lots of feta cheese in there. If you want to at this point, you could also slice up some bell peppers really, really thin. That would be delicious in here. This is going to go back into the oven, and I raise the temperature to 425 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm going to move it to the top rack so it cooks really hot. And this is going to cook in there uncovered for 15 minutes. Then I'm going to turn the broiler on to a high setting. Careful not to let anything burn. And this is going to cook under the broiler for another 4 or 5 minutes. So that way the feta gets a little bit of color on it. The sauce thickens really well. Take it out of the oven and you can garnish it with some finely chopped parsley. This tastes delicious with some toasted bread. You could also serve it on top of pasta if you'd like, but it's beautiful and it's so delicious. So just like that, the recipe is ready, and you could make this a little bit heartier by adding more veggies to it before you pop it in the oven the first time. You can put some potatoes in here. You can just cut some yellow or gold potatoes into little cubes and put them in between the meatballs. Of course, you can add some bell peppers in the beginning or in the very end. And if you want to make it a little bit more cheesy, then you can sprinkle some mozzarella cheese on the very end and make it a little bit richer. But I think it's perfect the way it is. It is time for the taste test. And the meatball just melts when you cut through it with the fork. So good. The feta is nice and creamy, and it just makes the sauce even better. The sauce became really rich in there. It cooked down for over an hour, so it did become a little bit less acidic because, like I said while we were making the sauce, canned tomatoes tend to be very, very acidic. And since we're not cooking them with any onions, you don't get any sweetness in there. To get the sauce to be nice and like less acidic, you usually have to cook it down over the stovetop for a long time. But the oven did the work for us this time. If you want to cut out the step if you're in a really big hurry and you don't want to make the sauce at all, you can take your favorite pasta sauce and just throw it over the meatballs. What I like to do is just puree it a little bit because my family doesn't really like chunks of tomatoes in the sauce. So you can take that little extra step or just throw it in there if you like chunky sauce, and it'll be perfect, but it will work well, especially if you're in a time crunch and you're trying to throw this all together on a busy weeknight. You can take that step, but make extra meatballs. Since you're making them, I would make a double or a triple batch because they freeze beautifully, and you can just take them out of the freezer whenever you need them. You don't even have to thaw them out, and put this meal together even easier without even having to make the meatballs because you'll have them on hand. So anytime I make meatballs, I make extra because it's a lifesaver on those busy, busy days. All that's needed to serve this is some toasted hearty bread. I have some from the farmer's market over here that has some cheese and jalapenos in it. Or you can serve this over pasta. If you want to keep this a little lighter, you can serve this over cauliflower rice. Let me get some bread in that sauce. So delicious. So comforting. You could barely taste the cinnamon in there. It just adds a little bit of warmth in the background. I hope you guys give this recipe a try. The exact measurements are on the website, dimitrasdishes.com. If you'd like to learn how to make a homemade bread, click over here and I'll see you right over there. Yes,